The day Earth joined the Galactic Alliance should have been humanity's greatest triumph. After centuries of looking up at the stars and wondering if they were alone, humans had finally found their answer. They were not only not alone, but they were now part of something greater. A vast community of intelligent species spread across thousands of star systems. James Miller stood at attention in his Blue Earth Fleet uniform, watching as the Alliance representatives signed the treaty that would change human history forever. As commander of Earth's largest orbital defense station, he had been selected to represent humanity's military at the ceremony. The Grand Hall of the United Nations building in New York buzzed with excitement. Dignitaries from every nation on Earth mingled with alien representatives, their strange forms and colors creating a living tapestry, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. "This marks the beginning of a new era for your species," announced the Alliance High Representative, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin. "Access to faster-than-light travel, advanced medicine, clean energy, all the benefits of Alliance membership are now yours." The crowd erupted in applause. Miller clapped too, but something in the High Representative's next words made his hand slow. "Of course, all new members must abide by Alliance regulations. Your technology development will be guided to ensure compatibility and safety. Most importantly, as is standard for species at your development stage, Earth will not be permitted to construct military vessels capable of interstellar travel or equipped with weapons above Category 3. Miller's hands stopped clapping entirely. He leaned toward Admiral Thompson beside him. "Did he just say we can't build warships?" Thompson nodded grimly. "That's been part of the deal from the start. They say it's standard procedure for developing species like us. But who will defend our colonies once we start expanding?" "The Alliance Defense Fleet. They've promised protection for all member worlds." Miller frowned but said nothing more. The ceremony continued, speeches were made, and humanity officially joined the galactic community. In the months that followed, the benefits became apparent. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were cured. Energy problems vanished as fusion technology was improved by alien science. The first human colony ships, civilian vessels approved by Alliance inspectors, departed for nearby star systems. But Commander Miller's concerns remained. 3 years later, Miller stood in the observation deck of Neptune Orbital Station, staring at the display showing the aftermath of the attack. The mining colony on Neptune's moon Triton lay in ruins, emergency shuttles evacuating survivors, while rescue teams searched for those trapped in collapsed habitats. "Pirates again," said Anna Wilson, director of Earth's Space Development Agency, who stood beside him. Her dark eyes reflected the emergency lights flashing on the display. "Third attack on our outer colonies this month." "Where was the Alliance Defense Fleet?" Miller asked, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. Wilson sighed. "They say they didn't receive the distress call until it was too late. Something about communications relay issues." "Convenient," Miller muttered. "Just like the attack on the Europa Research Station. Just like the raid on our Mars colony shipping lanes." The communication panel beeped. Miller touched the screen, and his face went pale as he read the casualty list. "Tom's on here," he said quietly. "My brother was on Triton." Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, James." Miller turned away from the display, his jaw tight. 217 dead. And we sit here with our hands tied while the Alliance tells us it's too dangerous to let humans have proper warships. "They say we're too unpredictable," Wilson said. "That our history shows we're too aggressive for our technological level. Yet they let the Draxis Consortium operate armed merchant vessels, and everyone knows they're just pirates with fancy paperwork." Miller paced the small observation deck. "It's been 3 years, Anna. 3 years of watching our people die while we wait for Alliance ships that never arrive in time." Wilson watched him carefully. "What are you suggesting?" Miller stopped pacing and lowered his voice. "The Alliance doesn't want us building warships." "Fine. Let's not build warships." "I don't follow." "The regulations prohibit military vessels with certain capabilities, But what about civilian ships with robust, defensive measures? Wilson's eyes widened. You're talking about exploiting loopholes in their own regulations. That's dangerous ground, James, if the Alliance caught us. They're already letting us die, Miller interrupted. My brother died because we couldn't defend our own colonies properly. How many more have to die before we admit the Alliance isn't going to protect us? Wilson was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, even if I agreed with you, where would we build such ships? Alliance inspectors have access to all Earth shipyards. A slight smile crossed Miller's face. Not all of them. Remember Project Blackstone? Wilson's eyebrows rose. The abandoned mining facility in the asteroid belt. That was shut down years ago. Officially, yes. Unofficially, I have friends who've kept it operational as a research outpost, far from regular inspection routes with its own manufacturing capabilities. What you're suggesting is treason against the Alliance, Wilson said, but Miller could hear the hesitation in her voice. I'm suggesting we protect our people when no one else will, Miller replied. I've lost my brother. I won't stand by and lose more. Wilson turned to look at the display showing emergency vehicles swarming around the damaged colony. Families were being torn apart. Children were among the dead. If we're caught, we'll lose everything, she said. Alliance membership, technological access, trade rights. And if we do nothing, we lose our people. Miller's voice was firm. I'd rather face Alliance sanctions than more funerals. Wilson closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. I'll need a proper proposal. Deniability for Earth's government. A way to disguise what we're building. I already have ideas, Miller said. Mining vessels require powerful engines. Asteroid deflection systems need targeting capabilities. Emergency response ships need robust hulls. And you'll need a team. Engineers, tacticians, people who can keep secrets. Miller nodded. I know just who to ask. People who've lost something to these attacks. People who understand what's at stake. Wilson took a deep breath. Send me your proposal through secure channels. No electronic transmissions, nothing that can be traced. As they spoke, another emergency transport arrived at the station, carrying more survivors from Triton. Through the viewport, Miller could see medical teams rushing to assist the injured being offloaded. Among them was a small child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, clutching a tattered stuffed animal as a medic led her toward the medical bay. Her face was blank with shock. Miller watched her pass and felt something harden inside him. The Alliance wants to treat us like children. It's time we grew up. Wilson nodded grimly. I'll see you at Blackstone in 2 weeks. Don't tell me how you get there. I don't want to know. As Wilson left the observation deck, Miller turned back to the viewport, watching the stars beyond Neptune. Somewhere out there, the Alliance Council made decisions about humanity's future without truly understanding what humans were capable of. They had labeled humans as dangerous and unpredictable. Perhaps it was time to show them just how right they were. Blackstone facility hung silently in the darkness of the asteroid belt, its external lights dimmed to avoid detection. From a distance, it looked like just another rocky body among millions, unremarkable and easily overlooked. This was exactly as Commander James Miller intended. Miller guided his shuttle through the narrow opening of the hidden docking bay, the magnetic shields shimmering briefly as he passed through them. Inside, the cavernous space buzzed with activity that would have shocked Alliance inspectors. Engineers in work suits moved between partially assembled ship frames while technicians tested power systems that were far beyond what any mining vessel would require. Not bad for 6 months of secret work, said Director Anna Wilson, who waited for him at the dock. Her normally perfect appearance was roughened by the realities of living in a hidden facility. Her short hair had grown out, and her practical jumpsuit was stained with machine oil. It's only the beginning, Miller replied, following her toward the main construction bay. We need to be operational within the year. The colonies can't wait any longer. Blackstone had once been an official earth mining operation, but budget cuts had led to its closure 5 years earlier. On paper, it was abandoned. In reality, Miller and a small team of trusted former Earth Fleet officers had secretly maintained and expanded it, preparing for the day humanity would need to defend itself without Alliance approval. "Our biggest challenge is power systems," Wilson explained as they walked. "The Alliance only permits civilian drives of Grade 3 or lower for ships our size. But we found ways around that limitation." They entered the main bay, and Miller stopped in his tracks. Before him stood the skeletal frame of what would become their first ship, much larger than he had expected. "We're calling her the ERS Defiant," Wilson said. "Emergency Response Ship. Officially. She'll be twice as fast as anything the Alliance thinks we can build." Tom Roberts, the project's chief engineer, approached them. In his mid-50s, with weathered skin and calloused hands, Roberts had lost his daughter in an attack on a Mars-bound transport the previous year. His eyes held the same determined look Miller saw in his own mirror each morning. "Commander, good to see you," Roberts said, offering a firm handshake. "I found something you'll want to see." He led them to a workstation where technical drawings and Alliance regulations filled multiple screens. "I've been studying Alliance restrictions line by line," Roberts explained. "There's a loophole we can exploit. Look here." He pointed to a section of dense legal text. "Emergency response vessels are permitted enhanced capabilities for rescue operations in hazardous environments. This includes reinforced hulls, advanced propulsion for rapid deployment, and defensive countermeasures to protect rescue personnel." Miller leaned closer. "Defensive countermeasures." Roberts grinned. "Anti-meteor point defenses, radiation shields, and this is the important part, systems to neutralize environmental hazards to rescue operations. The regulations don't clearly define what constitutes an environmental hazard. So a pirate ship could be classified as an environmental hazard," Wilson said slowly. "Exactly," Roberts nodded. "We're building rescue ships with the capability to neutralize threats to the people they're rescuing." Miller felt a smile spread across his face. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need. How soon until the Defiant is ready for testing?" 4 months for minimal operation. 6 for full capability," Roberts replied. "We're using modular construction techniques to speed things up. Once we have the design perfected, we can roll out more ships quickly." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the facility's security chief. "Director Wilson, we have an unscheduled shuttle approaching." Alliance markings. The mood in the room instantly shifted. Wilson looked at Miller with alarm. "How did they find us?" "Could be routine. The Alliance surveys the belt occasionally," Miller said, not believing it himself. "How long until they're within sensor range?" 30 minutes at their current speed," came the reply. Wilson turned to Roberts. "Hide anything that looks military. Cover the Defiant's weapon mounts. Everyone stick to the mining research cover story." Roberts nodded and rushed off, barking orders to his team. "We need to meet them at the auxiliary dock," Wilson told Miller. "That section is set up with legitimate mining equipment as our cover." As they hurried through the facility's corridors, Miller's mind raced. If the Alliance discovered what they were building, it would mean the end of the project, and possibly criminal charges for everyone involved. Years of imprisonment on an Alliance penal colony was the standard sentence for weapons violations. The Alliance inspector who emerged from the shuttle was a tall, thin man with precise movements and enhanced eyes that marked him as from one of the inner Alliance worlds. He introduced himself simply as Mark, withholding his full name as was common for inspection officials. "This facility was listed as decommissioned," Mark said, his enhanced eyes scanning everything with unsettling intensity. "Yet we detected power signatures and material shipments." Wilson stepped forward with a practiced smile. "We reopened Blackstone as a research outpost last year. We're developing improved mining techniques for the outer belt. It's all properly registered with Earth government." Mark consulted his datapad. "I see no such registration." "Bureaucratic oversight, I'm sure," Wilson replied smoothly. "I can provide our Earth authorization codes." Mark's expression remained neutral. I would like to inspect your operations. For the next 2 hours, they led Mark through carefully prepared sections of the facility. Engineering teams had worked frantically to hide evidence of their true purpose, covering military-grade components with tarps and replacing technical readouts with mining data on their screens. When they reached the main construction bay, the Defiant was partially concealed under scaffolding and disguised with temporary plating to hide its true design. Roberts met them there, explaining the ship as a next-generation deep-belt mining vessel with enhanced safety features. Mark studied the partially built ship carefully. The power requirements for this vessel seem excessive for mining operations. Roberts didn't miss a beat. Asteroid mining in the outer belt requires significant power. We're testing new techniques for processing ore in situ rather than hauling raw material back to Mars. It's more efficient but energy-intensive. Mark made notes on his pad. And these reinforced sections here. He pointed to what were actually weapon mounting points, now disguised as equipment bays. Specialized processing compartments, Roberts explained. The conditions in the outer belt are harsh. Everything needs extra reinforcement. Throughout the inspection, Miller remained tense, certain that at any moment Mark would see through their deception. When the inspector finally returned to his shuttle, his parting words left them all uneasy. I will file my report with Alliance oversight. Expect a follow-up inspection within the month. We will require complete technical schematics at that time. As the Alliance shuttle disappeared into the blackness of space, Wilson turned to Miller. We have 2 weeks at most before they return with a full inspection team. Miller nodded grimly. Then we accelerate the timeline. The Defiant needs to be operational before they come back. That's impossible, Roberts protested. We haven't even tested the propulsion systems, let alone the defensive capabilities. Then we work around the clock, Miller said firmly, and we prepare for the worst. If the Alliance returns before we're ready, we'll have to launch regardless. That night, as the facility hummed with frantic activity, Miller stood alone in the observation dome, looking out at the distant sun and the even more distant stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were vulnerable, depending on protection that never seemed to arrive in time. We're coming, he whispered to the darkness. Just hold on a little longer. They're coming back early, Wilson said, bursting into the makeshift command center where Miller was reviewing the Defiant systems. Alliance inspection fleet. 3 ships will reach Blackstone in less than 6 hours. Miller's face hardened. How many inspectors? This isn't just inspectors. It's a full verification team with security personnel. Someone tipped them off. Roberts looked up from his workstation, where final diagnostics on the Defiant were running. She's at 85%. The main weapons are online, but the targeting systems are still being calibrated. Engines are functional but untested beyond station-keeping thrusters. Miller made his decision instantly. We launch now. Now. Roberts sounded shocked. Commander, we haven't completed full system checks. The ship isn't ready. We're out of time, Miller replied. If that Alliance team boards the Defiant, everything we've worked for is finished. We need to move her out of here before they arrive. Wilson nodded in agreement. Who do you need for a skeleton crew? Just Roberts and a few of his top engineers. We'll take her out into the Kuiper Belt for testing, away from Alliance patrol routes. And the rest of us? Wilson asked. Stick to our cover story. You know nothing about a warship. You're running a mining research operation, exactly as we told Inspector Mark. Within the hour, Miller stood on the bridge of the Defiant as the docking clamps released. The ship was far from finished. Exposed conduits lined the walls, and temporary consoles had been hastily installed in place of the planned command systems. Only 6 people were aboard: Miller, Roberts, and 4 engineers chosen for their expertise with the ship's critical systems. Thrusters online, reported Kate, the propulsion specialist. Ready for departure. Take us out, nice and easy, Miller ordered. Keep power emissions to a minimum until we're well clear of Blackstone. The Defiant slipped from its berth like a shadow, emerging from the hidden dock into the vastness of the asteroid belt. For a vessel of its size, nearly 300 meters long, it moved with surprising grace. "Set course for the Kuiper Belt, edge of the Eris sector," Miller directed. "Once we're past Mars orbit, we'll test the main drive." As the ship accelerated away from Blackstone, Miller felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. The Defiant represented humanity's refusal to remain defenseless, but she was untested, incomplete, and now officially a rogue vessel. If the Alliance caught them, everyone aboard faced severe penalties. For hours, they traveled in tense silence, making minor adjustments to systems and repairing small failures that appeared during their journey. When they finally cleared the orbit of Mars, Roberts gave the signal they'd been waiting for. "We're clear for main engine test," he announced. "All safety systems online." Miller nodded. "Take us to full power, gradual increase." Kate's hands moved across her console, engaging main drive in 3, 2, 1. The ship hummed as power surged through its systems. The engine noise rose from a whisper to a deep, steady rumble. On the view screen, stars began to blur slightly as the Defiant accelerated. Power at 30%, 50%, 70%. The ship's frame vibrated but held firm. Roberts watched his engineering displays with growing excitement. "She's taking it, Commander." "Structural integrity holding." "Full power," Miller ordered. The Defiant leaped forward with sudden force, pressing them all back into their seats. The asteroid belt fell away behind them as the ship achieved a speed no mining vessel could ever reach. Alliance regulations permit civilian ships our size a maximum speed of 0.15 light, Roberts said with undisguised pride. "We're currently traveling at 0.35 and could push to 0.5 if needed." For the first time in months, Miller smiled openly. "Next, let's test our defensive measures." They spent the next 12 hours in the empty space beyond Neptune's orbit, testing each of the Defiant's systems. The ship's energy weapons, disguised as mining lasers, cut through test debris with precision. Point defense systems, officially listed as anti-meteor protection, tracked and neutralized drone targets with perfect accuracy. "She's everything we hoped for," Roberts said as they completed the final test. "Not quite a warship by Alliance military standards, but more than capable of defending our colonies against pirates." Miller was about to reply when an alarm sounded from the communications station. "Incoming transmission," reported Ben, the communications engineer. It's from the Neptune colony. They're under attack." Miller moved quickly to the station. Details. 3 ships, described as Draxus Consortium vessels. They've disabled the colony's communication array and are boarding the main habitat. The Draxus Consortium, officially independent traders, but known throughout human space as ruthless pirates who operated just within Alliance legal boundaries. The same group suspected in the attack that had killed Miller's brother. Miller looked around at his small crew. The Defiant was unfinished, untested in actual combat, and operating with minimal personnel. Engaging with the pirates would reveal their secret to the Alliance. How long would it take the Alliance defense fleet to respond? He asked. Ben checked the data. Nearest Alliance patrol is 6 hours away at their best speed. By then, the colony will be stripped of everything valuable and dozens will be dead, Miller said grimly. He straightened his shoulders. "Set course for Neptune. Maximum speed." Roberts looked concerned. "Commander, the ship isn't ready for combat. We're still running on backup systems for half our functions." "Those are our people on that colony," Miller replied firmly. "We built this ship to protect them when the Alliance wouldn't. What's the point if we hide when they need us most?" No one argued further. Kate programmed the course, and the Defiant surged toward Neptune, pushing its experimental engines to their limits. They arrived in Neptune's orbit in just under an hour, slowing only when the massive blue planet filled their view screen. The colony was a series of connected habitats orbiting Neptune's largest moon, Triton. Near it, 3 angular vessels were docked, their predatory shapes unmistakable as Draxus ships. They haven't spotted us yet, Ben reported. Their sensors are focused on the colony. Weapons status? Miller asked. Main energy arrays charged and ready, replied Dan, the weapons specialist. Point defense online. We can target all 3 ships if needed. Miller took a deep breath. This moment would change everything. Once they engaged, there would be no going back. Open a channel to the Draxis ships, he ordered. When the connection was established, Miller spoke clearly and calmly. Attention Draxis vessels. This is the Earth response ship Defiant. You are engaged in an illegal action against a human colony. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. After a moment of silence, a harsh voice responded. This is Captain Verex of the Free Trader Night Shadow. We're conducting legitimate salvage operations under Alliance Commercial Code. Interfere and we'll report you to Alliance authorities. Those are people, not salvage, Miller replied. You have 1 minute to disengage and withdraw. The pirate captain laughed. Your vessel is unregistered. You have no authority here, and judging by your power signature, you're just another mining ship. Leave now before we decide you're worth salvaging too. Miller cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Target their engines and weapon systems. Disable, don't destroy. The Defiant moved swiftly, emerging from Neptune's shadow into full view of the pirate vessels. For a moment, nothing happened as the Draxis ships assessed this unexpected arrival. Then one of the pirate ships detached from the colony and turned toward them, weapons powering up. They're targeting us, Dan announced. Miller nodded once. Fire. The Defiant's main energy array flashed, a brilliant beam connecting it to the approaching pirate ship. The effect was immediate. The Draxis vessel's engines flickered and died, leaving it drifting. One down, Miller said. Target the second ship. Before they could fire again, the remaining 2 pirate vessels detached from the colony and began emergency launch procedures. They're running, Ben said with disbelief in his voice. Let them go, Miller ordered, but download their identification codes. We want to know who they are when we meet them again. As the pirate ships fled, cheers erupted from the Neptune colony over the communication channel. The colonists had witnessed the entire exchange. This is Neptune Colony Director Paul. Whoever you are, thank you. The Alliance Defense Fleet never comes in time. Who are you? Miller hesitated before responding. Friends who believe humans should protect humans. We need to leave before Alliance patrols arrive, but we'll be watching. You're not alone anymore. As the Defiant turned away from Neptune, setting course for the outer system, Miller knew their actions would be reported to the Alliance within hours. The secret was out. Humans had built a warship. Where to now, Commander? Kate asked. Miller looked at the starfield on the view screen. Back to Blackstone to pick up Wilson and the others. Then we find somewhere new to continue our work. Today was just the beginning. News of the Defiant's defense of Neptune colony spread through human settlements faster than any Alliance sensor could contain it. Within days, the mysterious ship had become a symbol of hope for outer colony residents who had long felt abandoned by Earth's government and ignored by Alliance protection forces. The Alliance Council was not pleased. This is an outrageous violation of membership protocols. The Alliance High Representative's hologram towered over the emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. His normally smooth features were distorted with anger. Earth has constructed a military vessel in direct defiance of Alliance regulations. There will be consequences. General Howard, Earth's senior military representative, maintained a neutral expression. We understand your concern, High Representative, but Earth's government has no knowledge of any unauthorized military construction. Do not play games, General. We have visual confirmation from the Neptune incident. The vessel displayed capabilities far beyond civilian specifications. We're investigating the matter, Howard replied calmly. But I must point out that this Defiant protected a human colony when Alliance defense forces were hours away. 238 lives were saved. That is irrelevant to the violation. As the diplomatic crisis unfolded, Miller and his crew had already abandoned Blackstone facility. The Alliance had arrived in force only hours after the Defiant departed, arresting several junior technicians who had been left behind as part of the cover story. But Wilson and most of the senior staff had escaped, scattering to various hidden locations throughout the solar system. The new center of operations was beneath the surface of Ceres, in an abandoned mining complex much larger than Blackstone. Here, not one but 3 ships were under construction, each incorporating lessons learned from the Defiant's successful first mission. Miller stood with Wilson in the main construction bay, watching as teams assembled the second ship, codenamed Sentinel. "The sanctions are getting worse," Wilson said, reviewing reports on her tablet. "The Alliance has suspended technology transfers and imposed trade restrictions on all Earth products. Colonial supplies are being held at Alliance checkpoints for inspection, which means indefinitely." Miller frowned. "They're punishing innocent colonists to force Earth to give us up. It's worse than that. Our sources indicate the Alliance is deliberately reducing patrols near human settlements. They're creating a vacuum, knowing pirates will fill it. They're using our people as bait," Miller said, his voice hardening, "hoping we'll reveal ourselves again." Lisa Parker, formerly a tactical officer in Earth's fleet and now captain designate of the Sentinel, approached them. In her late 30s, with close-cropped hair and a focused gaze, she had lost her husband in the same Triton colony attack that had killed Miller's brother. "Construction is ahead of schedule," she reported. "Sentinel will be ready for launch in 3 weeks. Guardian and Protector are at frame completion." Miller nodded. "Good. The Alliance thinks they can starve us into submission, but they've only given us more people willing to help. Every sanctioned shipyard worker, every laid-off engineer, they're all finding their way to us. We've had contact from 3 more colony groups," Wilson added. "Mars Outpost, Europa Station, and Ganymede Base all want to contribute resources." "How are they handling the sanctions?" Miller asked. "Struggling, but determined. The Mars governor sent a message. Better to starve free than be fed as pets." A warning signal interrupted their conversation. The facility's communication officer hurried over. "Priority message from our contact in Jupiter space," he said urgently. "Large-scale attack underway at the Mars colonial hub. Multiple ships, not just pirates. Looks like a coordinated assault. Alliance patrols have technical difficulties and can't respond." "How many civilian ships in dock?" Lisa asked immediately. 17, including 3 passenger liners. Total population of the hub is over 6,000. Miller and Wilson exchanged glances. This was far bigger than the Neptune incident, a major colonial center under attack, with thousands of lives at stake. "How long until Sentinel is combat ready?" Miller asked Lisa. "We can launch now with basic systems, but weapons are only at 60% and drive efficiency is untested." "What about Defiant?" "Fully operational after the upgrades, but we're still training the expanded crew." Miller made his decision. "Launch both ships. I'll command Defiant, you take Sentinel. Wilson, coordinate from here and start evacuating this facility in case we fail and they track us back." Within an hour, both ships slipped out of Ceres' shadow. The Defiant now boasted a full crew of 24, while the Sentinel operated with the minimum 16 needed for basic function. They accelerated toward Mars, pushing engines beyond safety parameters. "Incoming data from Mars," reported Ben from his communication station on Defiant. 8 attacker ships. They've disabled the hub's outer defenses and are boarding through multiple points. They're not just looting. They're taking hostages. Pirates don't usually take hostages, Miller mused. Either they're slavers or someone wants bargaining chips against Earth. Wilson's voice came through the secure channel from Ceres. "This feels like a setup." Miller nodded grimly. "Whether it's a trap or not, we have people who need help. Lisa, when we arrive, Sentinel will target their engines, disable their ability to leave. Defiant will handle their weapons and create a path for boarding teams. We take back that station. Copy that. Lisa responded from Sentinel. But Commander, if this is a trap, there may be Alliance observers nearby, recording everything. Then let's give them something worth watching, Miller replied. They arrived at Mars to find the colonial hub in chaos. The massive wheel-shaped station's outer ring was damaged in multiple sections, and 8 sleek attack ships were docked at various points. The attackers' vessels bore no recognizable markings, not typical pirates, but professionals with military-grade equipment. Life signs, Miller asked as they approached. Multiple hostage groups being moved toward the attackers' ships, reported the sensor officer. They're starting to evacuate with their captives. Not on our watch, Miller said. All hands, battle stations. The Defiant and Sentinel emerged from Mars' orbital shadow in perfect formation. Their sudden appearance caused momentary confusion among the attackers. Open all frequencies, Miller ordered. Let everyone hear this. When the channel was open, he spoke clearly. Attention attackers at Mars Colonial Hub. This is Commander Miller of the Human Defense Force. Release all hostages and withdraw immediately, or be destroyed. The response came quickly, not in words, but in action. 2 of the attack ships detached from the station and turned their weapons toward the approaching human vessels. They're powering up weapons, Ben reported. Energy signatures match Alliance military grade. These aren't pirates. They're using Alliance tech. Miller's eyes narrowed. So that's how it is. Sentinel. Execute attack pattern Delta. Target their engines first. The battle that followed would later be described in hidden messages throughout human colonies as the day Mars stood. The Defiant and Sentinel, though outnumbered 4-1, moved with coordination that shocked their opponents. Years of simulation training in Earth Fleet, combined with the intimate knowledge of each ship's capabilities, gave Miller's forces an edge that raw firepower couldn't match. The Sentinel swooped beneath one attacker, precision beams slicing through engine housings while avoiding critical systems that might cause catastrophic explosions. The Defiant, meanwhile, engaged 3 ships simultaneously, its point defense systems intercepting incoming fire, while its main weapons systematically disabled the attackers' offensive capabilities. Boarding teams ready, reported Miller's tactical officer. Launch as soon as Sentinel clears path to Airlock 7, Miller ordered. Lisa, we need that path. The Sentinel executed a maneuver that would have been impossible for an Alliance vessel of similar size, rolling between 2 attackers while maintaining fire on both. The move created the opening they needed. Path clear, Lisa reported. But we've taken damage to our starboard shield emitters. Can't maintain this position long. Understood. Boarding teams, go now. From the Defiant's launch bay, 3 shuttles raced toward the colonial hub. Each carried a team of former Earth Fleet Marines, now fighting for this unauthorized defense force. They docked at Airlock 7 and stormed into the station, engaging the attackers directly. The battle raged for nearly an hour, in space around the station and through its corridors. When it ended, 6 of the 8 attack ships were disabled, their crews captured or neutralized. 2 had escaped, jumping to FTL speeds before they could be disabled. Miller stood in the hub's operations center, surveying the damage reports. 312 colonists injured, 47 dead, but thousands saved, and the station secured. Commander, Lisa called from where she was reviewing data from a captured attacker's ship. You need to see this. On her screen was the attacker's mission brief. The text was encoded, but clear enough to read. Operation Pirovo CHN. OBJG E. Force Human Defense or ESPONSE. Co-and firearm capabilities. Secure ho estages. For Illivi rage. At the bottom was an authorization code Miller recognized immediately. Alliance Military Intelligence. This wasn't pirates, he said quietly. This was an Alliance black operation to draw us out. Lisa nodded grimly. And to gather hostages to use against Earth's government. Miller looked around at the colonial staff who had returned to their posts, working alongside his people to restore the station's systems. "They need to know," he said finally. "Everyone needs to know the Alliance isn't just failing to protect us. They're actively working against us." As his team secured evidence from the attackers' ships and systems, Miller prepared a message that would be sent to every human settlement, station, and ship. The truth about the Mars incident would become the spark that changed humanity's relationship with the Alliance forever. The Grand Chamber of the Alliance Council fell silent as the evidence played on the massive display screen. Footage from the Mars Colonial Hub attack showed Alliance-coded ships firing on civilian areas. Documents recovered from the attackers revealed Operation Provocation in painful detail, a deliberate plan to draw out human defenders and gather hostages to force Earth's compliance. When the presentation ended, Earth Ambassador John Torres stood before the assembled representatives of 117 spacefaring species, a tall man with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades in space before turning to politics. Torres had been summoned to answer for humanity's treaty violations. Instead, he had turned the tables. "Distinguished representatives," Torres began, his voice steady and clear. "For 3 years, humanity has suffered while waiting for protection that never arrived. When we built ships to defend ourselves, we were sanctioned and threatened. Now we know why. Some within the Alliance never intended to protect us at all." High on his elevated platform, the Alliance High Representative shifted uncomfortably. "These allegations are concerning, but they do not excuse Earth's development of military vessels in violation of membership protocols. Those protocols were designed to keep humanity defenseless," said a new voice. James Miller strode into the chamber, flanked by Anna Wilson and Lisa Parker. Their entrance caused murmurs throughout the assembly. These were the leaders of the rogue human defense force, walking openly into the heart of Alliance power. Guards moved to intercept them, but Ambassador Torres raised his hand. "These individuals were granted diplomatic immunity for this session. They are here at my invitation." Miller approached the central podium. Behind him, on a small anti-gravity platform, rested a sealed container. "My name is Commander James Miller. I commanded what you call the illegal human warship Defiant. I stand here not to apologize, but to present evidence that the Alliance has systematically discriminated against humanity since our induction." He gestured, and the main display filled with a new set of data, response times for distress calls from various species colonies, sorted by membership tier. The average response time for a Tier 1 member's distress call is 26 minutes. For Tier 2, it's 52 minutes. For humanity and other Tier 3 members, it's 7 hours and 14 minutes, if ships respond at all. More murmurs filled the chamber as representatives from other newer species began studying the data with increased interest. "This disparity isn't accidental," Miller continued. "It's by design. The Alliance Military Command has designated human space as Low-Priority Response Zone Alpha. Yet our membership fees and resource contributions are calculated at the same rate as everyone else's." The High Representative's face had grown increasingly flushed. "These are internal military designations based on threat assessment and resource allocation. They are not evidence of discrimination." "Then perhaps this is," Miller replied, opening the container. From it, he removed a sleek device with Alliance military markings. "This is a long-range scanner module recovered from the Mars attackers. Its manufacturing code traces it directly to Alliance Military Production Facility Omega." He placed it on the evidence table where scanning drones immediately moved to verify its authenticity. The attack on Mars was carried out with Alliance military equipment, following Alliance military protocols, and operating under Alliance authorization codes. This wasn't a rogue operation, it was official policy. The chamber erupted in shouted questions and denials. The representatives of the 12 founding species, who controlled the Alliance military, conferred urgently among themselves. Several representatives of newer species moved to examine the evidence more closely. Ambassador Torres raised his hands for quiet. Humanity joined the alliance in good faith, accepting restrictions we were told were temporary and for mutual benefit. Instead, we discovered they were designed to keep us permanently dependent and vulnerable. Wilson stepped forward. We built defensive ships because we had to. Because our people were dying while alliance protection never came. We violated the letter of the treaty, yes, but the alliance violated its spirit from the beginning. A representative from the Solari Federation, another relatively new alliance member, rose from her seat. My government has experienced similar patterns of neglect. We support Earth's call for investigation and reform. One by one, representatives from 15 other species, all recent additions to the alliance, stood in solidarity. The balance of power in the chamber was shifting. The High Representative conferred briefly with the Inner Council before addressing the Assembly again. These are serious allegations that require thorough investigation. Until such time, Earth's violations still stand. No, Miller said firmly. The old agreement is dead. It died when the Alliance attacked Mars. Lissa moved to stand beside him. The human defense fleet now consists of 27 ships, built in secret throughout our solar system. Not one is officially a warship. Each is registered as a mining vessel, a rescue ship, or a research platform. Yet together, they form a force capable of defending human space without Alliance help. The High Representative's eyes widened. 27. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no more than 5 vessels. Miller allowed himself a small smile. You underestimated human ingenuity and our determination to survive. We've been building ships since the day we learned you wouldn't protect us. Ambassador Torres stepped forward again. Earth does not wish to leave the Alliance. We still believe in cooperation between species, in shared knowledge and mutual growth. But we cannot and will not accept second-class status. For several moments, the chamber was absolutely silent. Then the representative from Vega, one of the oldest Alliance members, stood. Perhaps, she said in her melodic voice, we have been too rigid in our treatment of newer species. My people remembered when we were once restricted as Earth is now. It took us centuries to gain equal standing, but the galaxy faces new threats that require unity, not division. She turned to address the High Representative directly. I propose a special committee to revise membership tiers and protocols, with equal representation from established and newer members. The Solari representative nodded enthusiastically, and immediate suspension of the weapons development restrictions for any member who can demonstrate a pattern of inadequate protection. More voices joined, and soon a clear majority of the Assembly was calling for reform. The founding members' absolute control was slipping for the first time in Alliance history. After hours of debate, a new framework emerged. Earth would be permitted to maintain its defense fleet, provided it accepted Alliance observers aboard each vessel. In return, Alliance patrol routes would be redrawn to ensure equal coverage of all member territories. Most significantly, a new council would be formed with representatives from all membership tiers to oversee military response protocols. As the session concluded, Miller found himself approached by the Vega representative. That was well played, Commander, she said quietly. But I wonder if you realize what you've truly done today. Secured protection for our people, Miller replied. She smiled enigmatically. You've done much more. For centuries, the founding species have maintained control through the myth that newer species lack the temperament for full partnership. Today, you shattered that myth. She gestured toward where groups of representatives from various newer Alliance members were deep in conversation, exchanging contact information and forming alliances of their own. You humans have a reputation for being unpredictable and aggressive, she continued. Today you proved half of that reputation correct, but not in the way the founders expected. Your aggression was not mindless violence, but calculated risk in defense of your people. Many here are impressed. Wilson joined them, catching the end of the conversation. What happens now? Now the real work begins, the Vega representative replied. The Alliance will change, slowly but surely. and humanity will help shape that change. 3 months later, Miller stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Earth defense vessel Defiant, no longer disguised as a mining ship, but openly bearing the insignia of Earth's legitimate defense force. Beside him stood Lisa, now Admiral Parker of the Earth Fleet. 6 more ships completed construction last week, she reported. Alliance observers have been assigned to each as agreed. Miller nodded. And Alliance response times to human distress calls? Down to 48 minutes on average, still not equal to Tier 1 members, but improving. And the Mars attackers. The Alliance Military Tribunal sentenced the commanders to life imprisonment. 3 members of the High Command have been removed from their positions for authorizing Operation Provocation. Miller looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed in just over a year. From a hidden asteroid facility to an acknowledged defensive fleet. From helpless colonies to protected settlements. Commander Miller, a voice called from the doorway. A young human officer stood at attention. The Alliance exchange officers have arrived. They're waiting in the briefing room. Exchange officers. Miller raised an eyebrow at Lisa. She smiled. Part of the new agreement. Alliance military personnel serve on our ships, and our officers serve on theirs. Cultural exchange and skill sharing, officially. Though I suspect they still want to keep an eye on us. And learn from us, Miller added. I heard 6 Alliance member species have begun developing their own defense fleets based on our designs. Together, they walked toward the briefing room, where representatives from 3 Alliance species waited to begin their training rotation aboard a human vessel. As the door slid open, Miller saw the mix of curiosity and apprehension on their alien faces. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," he said. "The ship that wasn't supposed to exist." As the new arrivals took their seats, Miller reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A secret project born of desperation had evolved into something that was changing the structure of interstellar politics. Humans had been told they couldn't build warships. They had done it anyway. And in the process, they had earned something more valuable than mere military power. They had earned respect.